coaches, consultants, bankers, CEOs, talent management, and surprisingly, IT people as well. I want to start out by sharing a little bit of information with our audience this morning or this evening. Saba, an intelligent talent management company, and workplacetrends.com, they recently released their global findings of the first global workforce leadership survey. And what they found was a major leadership gap. 1/3 of global companies struggle to find senior leaders, and only 12% of employees aspire to the corner office. It said that nearly half, 46% of the companies said leadership was the skill hardest to find in their employees, and only 36% of employees listed leadership as a strength in their organization. Of the companies polled, 39% offer leadership development programs, but only 15% of employees feel the training they receive is preparing them for the next generation. And less than 25% of businesses worldwide are using advanced technology for insights into their people and effectiveness of their talent programs. Just 23% are using big data and metrics visualization, and 21% tap into the predictive analysis potential of learning today. Now, I think that's a very important study. There's numerous findings in there, and I think one of the things that they found was that we are not performing globally in our organizations and meeting the needs of leaders or identifying leaders. And when I talk about today, and when I look at this report here that was released, they talk about the predictive analytics potential, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's get started here. Influence. It's interesting. We use it. We hear it. Influence is the cornerstone of all leadership success from the top to the bottom. It doesn't matter the organization or your industry or the company. Developing your influence has great benefits, benefits for you both personally and professionally. And it also, when you do that, it also has great benefits for the people that you are leading. You see, knowing everything about your potential to influence, that is the thing that opens the door for leaders to lead people. And why is this important? It is the very cornerstone that sustains long-term growth and performance. So in other words, great leaders, they grow other great leaders, the next generation of leaders. Today I'm going to be talking about influence, what it is, how to know if you have it, how to recognize it in others, and what you need to do to build your influence potential, making you an influential leader. So we're going to start off. The three main points that I'm going to cover are the difference between influence and being influential. And as we go along, you're going to find that there is some very significant differences. The next point is how being influential impacts the next generation of leaders. And we're going to look at the needs of the upcoming generation. And the third point I'm going to cover today is I'm going to introduce you to the 7 influence traits, which are the traits that grew out of years of research and study that I've done. So let's start with the distinction between influence and being influential. In doing the research on influence, I came across information that basically only addressed how you influence, how to get someone to do what you wanted, how to get someone to say what you wanted, and how to get someone to possibly change their beliefs. And when I found this stuff, I realized that it all had to do with me having to say or do something in order to get a response, to change their behavior, their thoughts, etc., which, by the way, can easily revert back to what they did or what they said before. So I found that this information was very useful, but for me, something was really missing. I wanted to know what needs to happen before I start influencing. What does a person need to bring to the table? What makes one influencer better than another influencer? And what does the next generation of leaders and business people need in order to be successful? And the answer I found is what I call being influential. You see, in order to understand the distinction between influence and influential, it was helpful for me to see what they looked like. And so I'm going to show you some pictures. Oh, we have all these people here. Here's a few examples of people of influence on a global stage. You have religious influence. You have the Pope there. We have the Dalai Lama. We have music influence. There's Paul McCartney and Bono. We have gurus, you know, Tony Robbins, a self-made millionaire, genius. We have sports, Roger Federer. Money, Bill Gates. We have icons in industry, Elon Musk, Rupert Murdoch, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson. And we have politicians, the group of 8 world leaders. And then there's this gentleman, Dale Carnegie. And he's very famous for his long-standing book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, written in 1936. Dale Carnegie, he was on to something. He was really ahead of his time. He found that when you want to influence another person, you need to make people feel important. You need to talk about what they want and do it by being genuinely interested in them. You need to let the other person do a great deal of the talking. And most importantly, it's important that you try to see things from their point of view. You see, influence in what I've just shown you is about what you say or do. Now, Dale Carnegie's ideas are brilliant, but what these ideas have in common is that they all are based on something that we do external from ourselves. It's an external event. They're based on doing something to impact another person. But there's another side to influence, and that's being influential. So what does being influential look like? Well, here are pictures here. We have Moses. We have Mother Teresa, started the Missionaries of Charity. We have Socrates, who gave us the Socratic method. We have Gandhi. We have Jesus. We have Nelson Mandela, an activist against apartheid. We have Picasso, who was a very influential artist. We have Einstein, his theories of energy and time. We have Shakespeare, who was a great expressionist of his time. These people were influential. Now, the connection between being influential and influence is this. You have to be a certain way in order to do or have a major impact on a situation or another person. You see, it's based on who you are that determines how successfully you will be able to get people to pay attention to what you do. So in other words, being influential is a higher order of influence. And this is a very, I can't impress upon you enough that this is a very important differentiation to make when you are becoming or growing future leaders. So let's summarize this. We have influence. That's an external event. It's something we say or do. Being influential is an internal process of what we are and who we are and what we bring to the table. Influence can be about title, whereas being influential is about testimony. It's your brand or your reputation. Influence is all about them. But being influential is about you. Remember, what you bring to the table will make you a great influencer. Influence is about a change. We change our thoughts, we change our clothes, we change our words. However, with change, you can always change back. Whereas being influential, when you're an influential person, you create a shift. And the best way that I describe what a shift is that I will ask everyone listening to this to close their eyes and picture themselves walking into a room and opening up a closet door, and in there they see an elephant wearing red sneakers. Now, when you close that door, I want you to open your eyes. How many of you forget that you have seen an elephant with red sneakers? You cannot forget that. That is what a shift is. When you're an influential leader, you cause a shift in people, and they do not and cannot shift back any more than you can forget that there's an elephant with red sneakers behind that door. So influence is a state of doing, which keeps people pretty busy. Being influential is a state of being. And one of the ways that I explain this is that when I want to influence, I need to walk into a room, but I have to say or do something in order to get a response or a reaction, in order to get people to do or say something. But if I'm influential, all I need to do is walk into the room to effect change. You see, many people really confuse, or they misuse, and they substitute these two words, but they're very different. Being influential is longer lasting, it's more effective, and it comes to us naturally because it's based on who we are. You don't need to resort to tips or tricks to get people to follow you, because once you become influential, they will always show up and they will always follow. Now, having influence and being an influencer is good, but being influential is better. So what is the litmus test? Ask yourself this question. If I remove my power, my title, my position, my money, or authority, will I still be influential? If the answer is no, then you are not influential yet. So let's take this whole idea to the next generation. What does it mean for them? Before we can expect our upcoming generation to be influential, it's essential first that we understand their needs. So what are the needs of the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs? Well, the first place to start is to understand their past. Where do they come from? These leaders, these future leaders, they have to acknowledge their past, the traditions of their family and the traditions of their culture. What have they learned? What experiences have they had? What has shaped those experiences? They need to respect the advice and the wisdom of those that came before them. Are they listening? And if they're not listening, why not? The second need of our future generation is to develop self-awareness and insight. The unsuccessful leader and the least effective influencer is the one who does not know himself. They need to develop their brand. They need to examine their personal vision. They need help in determining their direction. Who is going to help them? Who are they paying attention to? The third need of this generation is to sustain an environment that fosters success. They need to focus on company development. They have to ask and answer, what is my role? They need help with that. They have to accept that expertise may lie oftentimes within the company people and not always with them, which makes the stakes even higher and more important for this future generation to understand the art of being influential. They need to understand the importance of sustaining the work and the progress of the current and previous generations. Now, the fourth need that the next generation has is to gain experience. They have to work to gain experience that makes them worthy of the task or deserving of the position that they are moving into. And this requires a different mindset than the person who just simply shows up for work. You know, along with their technical skills, they need to hone their leadership and people skills. Now, the next and the fifth need is to grow their confidence. In a 2010 report from the Pew Research Center, they found that the generation of millennials has great confidence. They're very confident, so much so that they may appear arrogant, conceited, and overly confident. And what they are concerned about is this leading to an overly high opinion of themselves, seeking constant praise, and expecting quick promotions. They need to find balance within their confidence. They need to be willing to learn from the confident and influential leaders in their life, and they need to grow their confidence in order to understand how change happens. Now, lastly, the sixth need of our future generation is to know how to foster trust. And that trust I speak of in my program and the work that I do with future generations is trust with the internal customer, they need to gain their respect. The people they work with, their peers, the people they supervise, the people they depend on the front lines that actually makes their business successful. They need to foster trust with an external customer, gaining loyalty from that customer. And they need to foster trust within their international relationships. This is where they gain an esteemed reputation. And all of these are needs that can be met. So being influential, this is the foundation of being an influential leader. Developing influence potential is the first step successful leaders take to create the shifts that are necessary in an organization to sustain performance and growth. In other words, leaders need to be influential first, and then they can influence. It's similar to the foundation of your home. My home doesn't look like this, and I'm sure your homes don't look like this, but it gets the point across. If you don't pour or build a solid foundation, this is what you eventually get. And that solid foundation that we're talking about is giving the best development, training, and opportunities to our future generation of leaders. And if you don't do that, this is what happens. You get cracks. And organizations and people are no different. Just as the foundation of your house needs to withstand strong winds and floods and earthquakes, so too do our future leaders need to withstand criticism, blame, and fear. We need to prepare them. Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence, he said, never underestimate the importance of the basics. And what I have identified as the basics for being influential are these 7 influence traits: confidence, commitment, courage, passion, empowering, trustworthiness, and likability. You see, learning about the 7 influence traits is the first step in securing the future of the next generation of leaders. In order to impact or influence another person, to perform better, to develop leadership skills, you need to be influential. Then the place to start is by being aware of and growing these 7 influence traits. And here's what's really cool about these 7 influence traits. Every single person has them. You do, and so does every person that you lead. Every person of our future generation, they all have these traits. They're known by everyone. We've heard these 7 words since we were probably 8 or 9 years old. There's no confusion about what they mean. People have their own definitions. Once a person knows, for example, how trustworthy they really are, or how courageous they could be, for example, they don't forget it. Knowing this information about yourself causes a shift in your mindset. And once that mind shifts, it doesn't shift back. And this is the difference, again, between shift and change. So let's take a quick look at what leaders are facing in the work environment today and in the future. They're worried about reputation management. What is their brand? What perception do people have of them? Are they moving fast enough? Are they taking action? Are they performing for what is expected from the stakeholders? Are they connecting with their followers? Building that relationship is very important. Are they managing growth? Are they working toward and finding a healthy bottom line? Are they leading former peers? That can be difficult, gaining their respect and their support. Are they hiring the right people? Because we all know hiring the right people gives us the right ideas. Are they guiding change, overcoming resistance? Change is imperative. Are they inspiring others, motivating them to work smarter? They need to balance expectation. This is another issue. Looking for and making, I'm a firm believer that not only do we look for, but we need to make our opportunities. And the last thing is, are they asking for help? So looking at this list, I would say these are some pretty serious reasons for future leaders and today's leaders to sharpen their abilities and to know how they show up as the leader. It's no secret that influence is the most important asset or tool you can have when it comes to leading or guiding people. In order to do this effectively, you need to pay attention to these 7 influence traits. So why should a leader pay attention to these traits? What is it that makes them important? Well, there are 2 things that I'm going to share with you today of the many that motivate an influential leader to develop these 7 influence traits. And the first reason is leaders use these traits to grow personally and professionally, and this is what moves them to develop a leadership presence. Now, why should leaders care about their presence? Well, for 2 reasons. Presence is a main core competency which results from an internal process. You see, being influential expands on your leadership presence. It fosters a shift in you and the people you lead. An influential leader creates a deeper, more fulfilling result when they have this presence. Developing the traits that make you influential enhances what you bring to your team, to your department or the organization, and to the conversation. Now, the second reason people are strongly attracted to leaders who have high confidence and courage, which is also a part of their presence. People respect a leader who's passionate about working with them and can ask tough questions. People feel secure with leaders who exhibit solid trustworthiness. People respond to leaders they respect and trust. People are attracted to leaders who exhibit this type of courage, passion, and commitment. And all of these traits, all of these things contribute greatly to your leadership presence. Now, the second way the 7 influence traits are used by leaders is to help them grow more influential leaders, paying it forward. This is an essential key in leadership development and leadership succession. Every conversation involves influence. I challenge you, have a conversation where influence is not present, because it's always there. A future leader wants to influence someone, themselves, or a situation. They want more business, bigger sales, better trusting relationships, or a better understanding of himself. The influential leader is responsible to knowingly, confidently, and courageously respond to what future leaders need. And they know that creating influencers in their organization is what will sustain market share and business performance. You see, it's how you use your influence traits, these 7 traits that I showed you earlier. It's how you use these 7 traits and make the difference, that makes the difference between a laissez-faire leader and a leader who has great respect and a solid following in the world. And the reason is this: being influential shows up virtually everywhere. A process. It shows up with a person, a feeling, a role that you play. You could be the boss. You could be the receptionist. It shows up in every event. It shows up in your thinking, a belief. It shows up in patterns of behavior. See, being influential is a part of your behavior, your body language, your tone, what you say, and how secure you feel. And the extent to which you maximize your 7 influence traits will be the single determinant in how effective or influential you will be as a leader at all levels in your organization. You see, meeting the expectations of and mastering the ability to be an influential leader involves increasing confidence in your skills, staying committed to your professional development, courageously asking tough questions, and acknowledging equally tough answers, I might add, by the way. It involves empowering people's vulnerability to explore. This is where innovation comes, when you empower everyone in your company. They give you the next best idea. It involves expanding your trustworthiness so people trust your intentions. It involves passionately walking your talk, and it involves being likable, which, very interesting, opens up doors to more opportunities. So of course you can see that every one of these traits is important on multiple levels. However, all of these traits together make up the influential person. For example, a person might be high in passion but low in confidence, which may look like a person who gets really excited about something but doesn't necessarily have the confidence to act on their excitement or passion. No action takes place. They struggle with being effective. Or you could have a person that's high in commitment and be trustworthy, but isn't high in likability. Nobody likes them. And then they appear as unapproachable, which causes people to stay away. And the sad part about this, they may not even understand why. Even though the 7 influence traits are the fundamentals or basics of being influential, however, when you begin to examine how these traits, which are common among all cultures and are an early part of our language, they can also be the biggest challenge we face. And why is that? A person needs to be willing to do the work to correct and meet their challenges, embrace what is possible. And it's difficult to face and to talk and to find out. I am not as confident as I'd like to be. So here's something that I discovered. If you are influential, you will always have influence. And I cannot stress this enough. The leaders that I showed you, there are so many leaders, so many people of influence that when you take away their authority, their money, their title, their position, they are not influential. But as we saw with another group of people, there are people who have none of that title and power and authority, but it's because of who they are, what they bring to the table, that they are very, very influential. And people will follow, and people will listen. You see, influence is at the heart of every success, and it's also the reason for every failure. So I'm looking at our time, and I do want to make sure that I have time to take questions. So I want to introduce you to something that I have created. This is something, the question is how can you find out where you are on these traits? How can you recognize when someone has the potential to be an influencer? Well, our company developed this scientifically validated instrument called the Keller Influence Indicator, or the K2, because it looks like a Roman numeral 2. It's KII, but we call it the K2. The K2 is becoming the global credential on influence. It assesses potential. It provides a benchmark score with a high degree of certainty, of predictability. Remember earlier in the presentation I talked about predictability index and how important that is. The K2 builds on that potential within a person's culture. It identifies the business area who has that potential, that leader, that next person that is coming up, and how do we need to invest in them? Where do we start? It pinpoints exactly what is missing, what that gap is. The K2 is the only one of its kind in the world, and it is now being used in more than 40 countries, 46 to be exact. It's now, and the other piece about this is that it is a good measure of the health of your future leaders and a measure of the current potential of your organization. Now, the K2, once a person takes this assessment, they receive 2 reports. Each report is approximately 50 pages long, so it is not fluff. It's detailed, it's tailored, and it's customized based on how the person responded to the items on the assessment. Now, your K2 report covers 5 areas. The first one is it reveals your TRACE score meaning. What is that score? What does it mean? And how is it on the norming scale? It talks about your competitive advantage. It shares the person's advantage that they have. What is unique about them, and how can they develop and use that? The third area, it talks about the blind spots. What is missing? What is it that this future leader cannot see about himself? And what is it that they need to know? The next thing that it does, it covers how you can leverage each trait. So let's say you're very high in courage. How can you use courage to grow your trustworthiness? How can you use it to grow your confidence? And lastly, it talks about improvements that need to be made. and how you can do this. The second report that is generated by the K2 assessment focuses on 5 organizational competencies. And what I have done in this report is that I have taken those 7 influence traits and I've related them each to all of these 5 organizational competencies. The first one that this report reveals is on leadership. Depending on your scores, how do you show up as a leader? And so what this does, it takes your confidence score all the way through to your likability score, all 7 scores, and it shows how these traits influence how you show up as a leader. The next organizational competency that we do this with is communication. Based on your 7 influence traits, how do you show up as a communicator? The third organizational competency is team effectiveness. How well do you work in a team? What do you contribute to that team? Based on your 7 influence traits, we can predict how you show up as an effective team member. The fourth competency is strategy and solutions. I felt that this was a very important competency to include, and we've developed it very thoroughly. What this does is that we look at your 7 influence traits and we predict your capability of showing up as a strategist and how well you will be prepared to develop solutions. And the last organizational competency is execution and evaluation. This is how do you follow through and act on the plan? How flexible are you with your plan? And how do you measure your success? We use the 7 influence traits to determine what your potential is or what a future leader's potential is when they need to execute a plan and then evaluate it. Now, these 5 competencies were identified as being the top 5 competencies that organizations or businesses do the most training on and they invest the most resources in. We are also now working on a third report called the K2 Executive Summary Report, which is a short summary of these 2 reports that I just showed you. Now, I want to get to everyone's questions, but first, I have a gift for you. To show my appreciation for your invitation to present to you today, I wanted to offer you 2. The first thing is the opportunity to receive your customized K2 and soccer reports by taking the K2 assessment. All you need to do is follow the link that's in blue on the screen here. Take the assessment. It'll take you about 25 minutes, and your reports will show up immediately in your account. You can download them, save them, print them. They will always be there in your account. Now, the second thing that I want to offer you is knowing that the K2 assessment is just the initial step. It's the first step. That what is offered online on our site, we have a great deal of material for people to use for educating themselves, for understanding influence and being influential. We have things there for companies and leaders wanting to train their people from the executive level all the way down and through the organization. Now, these are pre-designed programs that are very effective, and they're being used very widely. But we do have a more robust program for companies who are willing and capable of investing in and supporting the internal development of their future leaders. We have a tailored or customized, if you will, program that's available, but it's only available on a limited basis to companies that qualify because it's costly and of time constraints. And it involves me personally. So my second gift to you is this. I want to offer that if anyone attending this webinar is interested in having a conversation about our more exclusive program and would like to talk to me personally, please contact me. I'd be happy to answer your questions. I'd be happy to listen to your comments. Or if you have a particular application for this knowledge, I would be happy to talk with you about it. So please contact me at my personal email address at karen.keller@karen-keller.com. I'd be really happy to speak with you. So, Nida, I'd be happy to answer any questions that your audience might have, and it's been a pleasure presenting to your group today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Karen. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. It was lovely having you here. And thank you for this opportunity. Hopefully the attendees can benefit from this test and they get to learn a lot about themselves. So,
Yes.
folks, we're open for the question and answers. You can either put the question in the chat box or you can raise the hand icon available on the webinar console. We have first question, and the question is, can you please explain the relationship influence has in building a strong organization?
That's a really good question. Influence. When you are building a strong organization, you need to have a relationship with the people within that organization because you can't do it all by yourself. You need to have and attract good people. The president and CEO of Pixar recently said that he was asked in an interview if you could have the right people or the right ideas, which would you take? And his response was, I will always take the right people because they will give me the right ideas. And the reason I point this out is because being able to work with the right people, you need to have influence and be influential. They need to listen to you and understand you. You need to be influential and empower them. And when you accomplish this, your organization will thrive because you are tapping into their personal goals and you're helping them align with your goals as a company. And the way to do this is through being influential, having confidence in the people that you lead, being vulnerable yourself, developing a trusting relationship. All of these things are very, very key to the success of how you appear on a global stage, but also how you appear on your organizational stage, and that is how your organization will see you. People are happy and excited to come, to be generous, to work hard for people that they respect and people that they value and they see as having their best interests at heart. So being able to accomplish that requires that you are proficient in these 7 influence traits. So I hope that answers the question.
Hopefully it does. Thank you, Dr. Karen. We have another one, and the question is, how does K2 impact the success of their organization, of an organization?
Well, the K2, one of the things, this is a good question, actually. I'm glad somebody asked it. I will start by saying this. There is nothing more important in business. I don't care what kind of business you're in. There is nothing more important than predictability. And this instrument, the K2 instrument, predicts and identifies the upcoming potential of the leaders, or the potential of upcoming leaders. This instrument shows you where people are. It gives you a percentage. It shows you what their potential is in these 7 influence traits, because the research shows that these are the 7 traits that create an influential person. And when you're influential, remember, those are the long-lasting results. And I don't just mean results for, your 3rd quarter or at the end of the year, your annual review. What I'm talking about is results that last years. Because you are influential, it lasts years. And this is really important. And the K2, what this does is it gives you a benchmark and it shows you. So let's say a person comes in, he takes the assessment, and he has a 62 in confidence. Guess what? Now you have pinpointed and identified immediately what help that person needs to move forward. You could have very, very skilled and talented people in your organization that are not performing up to their highest potential, and we're not sure why. This is going to tell you why that is, not only why, but it's going to tell you where to start and what to invest in. And that's how we have companies that are using this. They are looking at their top people, their frontline people, their salespeople, if you will, and they're saying, how can we help you perform better? Well, this opens the door and it foundation for where to start, and it identifies. Now, one of the things that we get as feedback on this instrument is the accuracy. It is scientifically validated and very reliable. And if people are interested, on our site, karen-keller.com, we do have a copy of the K2 Research and Summary Report, which offers you all the statistical analysis and that we did with this instrument as we went through the whole process of building it. So yes, it does. It offers you information, not only information, which is really important, but it offers you insight into what is a barrier for that person. The other thing that the K2 does, and this is what I think is even probably more important, is that it identifies the strengths. I'm a firm believer, because I've seen it happen. Better researchers that have gone before me have proven this time and time again, that when you focus on a person's strengths, they really perform. They really step up to the plate. They really deliver. And so let's say a person takes this and they have a 92 in trustworthiness and an 86 in likability. Those are very high scores, by the way. And when you find out that this person has those strengths, guess what? Those strengths can be used and maximized or leveraged to grow their influence presence in an organization. So there's ways that you can use this information, but it brings insight in for people about themselves, for people who are working with people and saying, yeah, how do I invest with this person? How do I help this person achieve the goals that we've decided? So it's a very strong tool, but it's only the first step, but it's a major first step. Excuse me.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. We have another question from an attendee, and Mr. Rauf, I'm unmuting you. You can ask the question directly with Dr. Karen.
We'll cover it. We'll not keep things for it as simple as it is. I don't know this guy.
I think so. He's not active right now. So let me go again to another question that we have from another attendee. And the question is, what traits should we emphasize on most to become an influential leader?
Well, that's a good question too. That's a question that we do get occasionally. Which traits are the most important? Well, I will answer this by saying all these traits are very important and they're equally important. And the reason I say that is because they all impact each other. The trait that, my favorite trait is courage, because it takes a lot of courage to grow the other traits. It takes courage to express your passion. It takes courage to be confident, especially when you have self-doubt. Everybody has that. They have questions about, did I make the right decision? They may have had experiences where they've been rejected or they've had failure. That stuff affects our confidence. And so it takes a lot of courage to go ahead again and to move forward. The trait of likability, I call that the gateway trait. And the reason I call it the gateway trait is because if you are not likable, people will not see the gifts that you have to offer. If you're not approachable, if people don't see you as someone that they can talk to, all those things come under likability. And once people see that you are likable, then they're going to be able to experience your confidence, your passion, your trustworthiness. And so all of these traits, now to answer a little more in depth about the person's question, is that once these traits are identified, that's where you see which is the most important one. So you get the scores, you get 7 scores, you also get a total score called a K factor, but you get your 7 trait scores, and then is when you decide, where do I need to focus? Am I going to focus on something that's really, really strong, Or am I going to focus on something that I need to improve that may be more of a challenge for me? And that's how you determine. It's an individual thing. Does that answer the question?
Hopefully it does for
Mm-hmm.
Mr. I think. So we can go to the next question. And the question is, earlier you had mentioned that the 7 influence traits are present in every person. But how do we make ourselves realize that?
Oh, okay. One of the things that, we have all these traits, and, one of the things I want to mention is that this whole process, this assessment, it's not a personality assessment, it's not a needs assessment, it's not an interest assessment. What it is that it's looking at a different dimension of a person. So how do we acknowledge that we have these things? Well, one of the things that happens is that you encourage these traits in your children, because they are our next generation. Whether they're leading only themselves or they're leading multi-billion organizations. They are leaders, and they have a relationship with themselves. They're going to have relationships with other people. And so one of the ways to acknowledge these traits and to know that they're there is to talk about them. Tell your children, I'm proud of you, or I like you. I really like you because this. I like you unconditionally. Fostering that type of understanding when people are young, when we have little people, our children, that's very important. So let's say a person grew up in a culture, not a culture, but a situation or family, whatever, where they didn't hear these kinds of things. It's never too late. You can always develop this yourself. You can learn about yourself. You can come to appreciate and respect the beautiful things about yourself. You can start to see yourself as a trustworthy person, for example. And if you don't, then the question is to ask, what is it and why don't I see myself as trustworthy? And there's lots of reasons. It's not that you're telling lies all the time or that you're showing up as a phony. It could all be related because you're afraid of something. And that comes out. And people go, I'm not sure if I really trust that person. So there could be multiple reasons. And that's part of what this opens up. It helps us understand ourselves better. It helps us understand our children better. It helps us understand our employees and the people that work with us, that partner with us in our businesses. It also can help you for the advanced, and this is kind of what I talked about, that tailored program. I work with people on how to understand the 7 traits of the people they do business with, without them even having to take it. Because once you become very knowledgeable and understand at a deep level these 7 traits, you can predict these traits in the people you do business with. And that's what I've spent my 22 years coaching in large organizations, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, when I was helping them recognize other influential people and how to work with them. And that's kind of a sideline on that. But yes, it's good that you can start at any time to recognize these traits and to access them, and just knowing that they're there.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. We have another one, and the question is, has influence been able to produce effective leaders? Can you please give a real-life example?
Oh, influence. Effective leaders. Lee Iacocca, who was a long time ago, actually, pulled Chrysler out of a major crisis. And he's one of my, that tells you how old I am. But that was kind of my first introduction into how people are influential, and the way Mr. Iacocca led that entire transformation of that company was because of how he related to the people in that company. He trusted them. He let them see him as the leader of who he was. You know, he had great courage. He had a terrific capability of establishing a relationship where everybody liked him. He knew the importance of trying to get people to connect with the goals that he had. And here's the other thing about him. He had to do it in X amount of time. We have Richard Branson. Richard Branson from the Virgin Records, and you know, the conglomerate that he designed and did. Actually, it's interesting because Richard Branson was told as a child that he wouldn't succeed at anything because he wasn't focused. His ideas were grandiose. He was all over the place. They were kind of silly, and he was really dismissed quite a bit. Another leader that I just became friends with is the chief marketing officer at Microsoft. He as well has become Chris Capasola. He became a very influential person in that company because of these traits. And he's worked there for like 25 years, and he has advanced through the company because he's an influential person. He exudes these 7 traits. And so you can look at, you can pick up most biographies of very successful people, and you will see how they've used these 7 traits to get to where they are now, and has made their companies or their countries or what have you very successful.
Well, thank you, Dr. Karen. That brings us towards the end of this webinar. Any concluding remarks from your side before we end this session?
What I would say is please feel free to take this assessment, and it's kind of fun to learn some things about yourself, but more importantly, it'll give you some very good information, insight. And again, my second gift, if anyone is interested in having a personal conversation to discuss what their needs might be or applications they might have for this, I am more than happy to arrange that and speak personally and make time in my schedule for that. But they'll need to just contact me at this email address on the slide. Thank you, Nida. This was very enjoyable. Again, thank you for inviting me to present to this group. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
It's been an honor having you on this platform as well. Folks, you can reach Dr. Karen on the address mentioned on the screen. That is karen.keller@karen-keller.com. Once again, I really want to thank you, Dr. Karen, on behalf of Gulf Business Network Training Center, for your valuable time and sharing valuable information with us. And thank you all of those who've attended this webinar. We are recording this webinar and it will be uploaded on our website. So please stay tuned to webinar.gbntc.com for updates or for downloading the soft copy of this presentation in case you have missed it or you want to see it again. With that, I'd like to end the webinar and you all will be automatically dismissed. Thank you very much and you all have a good day. Thank you, Dr. Karen.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.